It was just another ordinary morning. But for the man driving through the busy streets of the city, it was anything but ordinary. The sun was just starting to rise, casting a soft golden light on the buildings, and the air was filled with the usual sounds of cars honking and people chatting as they began their day. The man, a delivery driver, was making his rounds carrying packages that needed to be dropped off on time. He didn't have a fancy job title or a big office. He just had a truck, a list of deliveries, and a determination to get things done. He was no stranger to hard work. Every day he faced the challenges that came with his job: long hours, traffic jams, and sometimes the impatience of people waiting for their packages. But he didn't complain. He had a reason to keep pushing forward, even when the days felt endless and the pay was barely enough. He was working to build a better future, even if it was just one delivery at a time. This particular morning, his route took him to a wealthy neighborhood, the kind of place with big houses surrounded by tall gates and expensive cars parked in driveways. He had been here before, but it never felt like a place he truly belonged. Still, he drove up to the front gate, pressed the buzzer, and waited. After a moment, the heavy metal gate creaked open slowly, revealing a sprawling mansion beyond. Standing at the entrance was a woman who looked like she belonged in a magazine. She was tall, confident, and dressed in clothes that must have cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was perfectly styled, and her eyes held a sharpness that made it clear she was used to getting what she wanted. The delivery driver nodded politely and climbed out of his truck. He was carrying a large, fragile crate that needed to be handled with care. He moved carefully, knowing how easily the contents could be damaged. But as he worked, the woman watched him with an unreadable expression. She didn't offer any help or even a kind word. Instead, she spoke in a tone that was just loud enough for him to hear. "Fix it and I'll call you boss," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He stopped for a moment, surprised by the comment. It wasn't the first time someone had spoken down to him, but it still stung. He looked up at her, his face calm and steady, and didn't reply. Instead, he went back to his work, focused on carefully placing the crate inside the mansion. The woman smirked and took a sip of her drink, clearly amused by the situation. A few moments later, a member of her staff laughed quietly, as if the whole thing was some kind of joke. But the delivery driver ignored it all. He didn't let the words get to him. He knew that his worth wasn't defined by the opinions of others, especially not someone who had never walked in his shoes. As he finished the delivery, he glanced back at the woman one last time. There was something about her gaze that felt cold, but also challenged him in a way he didn't expect. Without a word, he got back into his truck and drove away, the crate safely delivered but the comment lingering in his mind. For the rest of the day, he couldn't shake the feeling that those words, "fix it," and "I'll call you boss," held a deeper meaning. They weren't just a taunt. They were a challenge. And something inside him stirred. He thought about his past, about the dreams he had once held tightly but had let slip away. Before becoming a delivery driver, he had worked in technology and engineering. He was good at solving problems, building things that made life easier. But life hadn't been kind, and circumstances forced him into a job that barely paid the bills. That night, after his shift ended and the city grew quiet, he sat alone in his small apartment. The room was modest, with only the essentials, but it was his sanctuary. On the table lay an old notebook filled with sketches and notes from years ago, ideas he had dreamed of turning into reality. One of those ideas was an invention he believed could change how deliveries were made in cities like his own. He picked up the notebook and flipped through the pages. The designs were rough, the handwriting faded, but the potential was still there. It was an idea for a system that used technology to make delivery routes smarter, faster, and cheaper, something that could help drivers like him and businesses alike. The delivery driver stared at the pages for a long time. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was his chance to do more than just deliver packages. Maybe he could build something that would prove the woman wrong. Maybe he could fix it and earn that title she had mocked him with. Over the next few days, the thought didn't leave him. He started researching again, reading articles about new technology and how cities were changing. He reached out to old contacts he had from his engineering days, asking questions and seeking advice. It wasn't easy. The world of startups and tech innovation was fast-moving and expensive. But he was determined. He worked late into the night, sketching new ideas, writing code, and dreaming bigger. Each small progress felt like a victory. Every step brought him closer to a future where he wasn't just a delivery driver. He was a creator, a leader, someone who could change the game. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the woman barely remembered the delivery driver who had come and gone. For her, it was just another day, another shipment. But for him, it was the start of a journey that would change everything. The city around them kept moving, people rushing to and fro, unaware of the quiet determination growing in one man's heart. He wasn't just delivering packages anymore. He was delivering on a promise to himself, to rise above, to fix what was broken and to claim a place at the table. And so, the story begins with a simple delivery, a careless taunt, and a man who refused to be defined by his circumstances. The road ahead was long and full of challenges, but he was ready. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment, one phrase, to ignite a fire that can't be put out. After the delivery driver finished placing the fragile crate inside the mansion, the woman in the white blazer didn't seem impressed. She took a small step forward and glanced at the crate with a look that was more annoyed than thankful. The air between them was thick with tension, even though no harsh words were exchanged. The woman crossed her arms and looked down at the driver, her eyes sharp and full of doubt. "You really think you can handle this kind of work?" she asked, her voice low but filled with challenge. She didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she took a sip from her glass and added, "Fix it and I'll call you boss." The words felt like a slap, not just because they were meant to belittle, but because they suggested that if he couldn't prove himself, he was nothing. The delivery driver looked at her calmly. He didn't say anything right away. Instead, he took a deep breath and started checking the crate carefully. The wooden box was old and looked like it had been through a lot during the trip. He saw that one of the metal clasps was loose, and the crate might fall apart if it was moved too quickly. The driver knew that if this crate broke, it would mean big trouble. Not only would the company lose money, but he would probably be blamed for it. Still, he didn't panic. He had experience with fixing things and making sure fragile objects arrived safely. Without waiting for permission, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small toolkit he always carried. It wasn't much, just some screwdrivers, tape, and a few other tools he had collected over the years, but it was enough for small fixes. He got to work, carefully tightening the clasp and adding extra tape around the weak spots. The woman watched him for a while, her smirk growing. She didn't believe he could really fix anything. Maybe she thought he was just wasting time or embarrassing himself. A few of her staff members gathered nearby, whispering quietly and sharing amused looks. The delivery driver ignored the whispers. His hands moved quickly but carefully. Every twist of the screwdriver, every strip of tape was a small act of defiance. He wasn't just fixing a crate. He was fixing the idea people had of him, fixing a broken belief that he was less than capable just because of his job, his background, or the color of his skin. After about 15 minutes, he stepped back and gave the crate a gentle shake. It felt secure. He looked up at the woman and said quietly, "It's fixed. It won't break now." For a moment, the woman's smile disappeared. She blinked, surprised that the delivery driver had actually done what she said. Her eyes narrowed again, but this time there was a hint of respect mixed with disbelief. She nodded once and said, "All right, boss." Her voice was quiet, but everyone nearby heard it. The delivery driver noticed the change. That small word, boss, was more than a title. It was an admission that he had earned a moment of respect, even from someone who had doubted him. But the moment didn't last long. The woman quickly straightened up, put her glass down on a nearby table and said, "Don't get used to it." The delivery driver smiled, but it was a smile that showed he wasn't bothered by her words anymore. He packed up his tools and headed back to his truck. The crate was safe, the delivery was done, and somewhere deep inside a seed of determination had been planted. As he drove away from the mansion, the words the woman had spoken replayed in his mind. "Fix it and I'll call you boss." The challenge had been accepted, but it also reminded him of how much more there was to do. He thought about his life, about all the moments when people had underestimated him, ignored him, or treated him like he was invisible. The long hours driving delivery trucks, the tired nights, the small apartment with peeling paint and worn furniture, the dreams he once had, tucked away in a drawer somewhere, collecting dust. He pulled over for a moment and looked out at the busy street. Around him, people were rushing by, caught up in their own lives. No one noticed the delivery driver who had just fixed a crate and earned a title, even if only for a few seconds. But he noticed himself. And that was the first step. When he got home that evening, he sat down at his small kitchen table and pulled out a notebook he kept hidden in a drawer. It was old, filled with sketches and notes from years ago. Ideas for inventions, for new ways to solve problems. He had been an engineer once, before life took a different path. He flipped through the pages, tracing his finger over drawings of machines and systems he had dreamed of building. One idea stood out. A plan for a smart delivery system that could help drivers like him navigate the city faster, safer, and cheaper. He remembered how frustrating it was to waste time stuck in traffic, or to miss a delivery because of poor planning. What if there was a way to fix that? To create something that could help everyone, drivers, customers, and companies. The idea felt alive again. He sat up straighter and started writing. His handwriting was messy, but his thoughts were clear. He began drafting a new plan, one that used modern technology like computers and sensors to make deliveries smarter. For hours, he worked under the dim light of a small lamp. The city outside grew quiet, but inside his tiny apartment, hope was growing louder. Each word he wrote, each line he drew, was a step toward something bigger than himself. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He had no money to start a business. No fancy office, no investors knocking at his door. Just a head full of ideas and hands willing to work hard. But he also knew one thing. He wasn't going to let the woman's words define him. "Fix it and I'll call you boss." She had issued a challenge. But she didn't know what she had started. The next morning, as the sun rose again over the city, the delivery driver woke up with a new sense of purpose. He still had a job to do, deliveries to make, packages to drop off. But now he was more than just a driver. He was a man with a plan. A man ready to fix what was broken, not just a crate, but his future. Throughout the day, as he made his deliveries, he thought about his new idea. He imagined how it could work, how it could change everything. He told himself he would find a way to bring it to life. People looked at him like he was just another delivery driver, but he felt different. Inside, he carried a secret hope, a quiet fire that no one could see, but that was burning brighter with every mile he drove. Days turned into weeks. Every free moment was spent learning, planning, and dreaming. He read about technology and business. He reached out to old friends who had some knowledge about coding and startups. Some helped him, others ignored him, but he didn't stop. He began building a small version of his idea on his old laptop. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And all the while, the woman's words echoed in his mind. Not as an insult, but as a challenge he was determined to meet. "Fix it, and I'll call you boss." He wasn't sure if she would ever say those words again. But one thing was clear, he was going to fix it. Not for her, not for anyone else, but for himself. Because sometimes the hardest part of a journey isn't the road ahead. It's deciding to take the first step. And he had just taken his. After that night, the man's mind was full of new energy. The woman's words, "Fix it and I'll call you boss," had stuck with him in a way he didn't expect. At first they felt like an insult, a way to put him down. But now they felt more like a challenge, and he was ready to accept it. The next few days were different from all the others. He still went to work as a delivery driver, moving packages from place to place. But in the quiet moments between stops, his mind was busy with ideas. He thought about his old notebook, the one filled with sketches and dreams he had almost forgotten. It was time to open it again. He sat down at his small kitchen table, the same one that had seen so many late-night meals and tired mornings. He pulled out the notebook and turned to a page that showed the rough design of a system he once imagined. It was a way to use computers and smart technology to help delivery drivers plan their routes better. He wanted to make it easier for drivers to find the fastest path, avoid traffic, and deliver packages on time. He stared at the page for a long time. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, half-finished, and had many mistakes. But it was a start. He picked up his pen and began to rewrite his ideas in a new way, thinking about how things had changed since he first drew it. Technology was moving fast now, with phones and computers everywhere. Maybe this time his idea could really work. He didn't tell many people about it. He knew some might laugh or say it was a waste of time. After all, he was just a delivery driver, not a big tech person anymore. But inside he felt a fire growing. He wanted to prove that he was more than his job or his past. He was a problem solver. He was someone who could create something new and useful. As the days passed, he started spending every free moment working on his idea. After his deliveries were done, he would go to a small public library nearby. There he used the computers to learn more about programming and new technology. He watched free tutorials online and read articles about how smart systems were changing industries. Learning was hard. Sometimes he felt tired and discouraged. The code wouldn't work the way he wanted. The plans he made didn't fit together perfectly. But he kept going. Every small success, every problem solved, felt like a step closer to his goal. He also reached out to a few people he had known from his earlier days in engineering. Some remembered him, some didn't. A few were willing to help, offering advice or encouragement. One old friend sent him links to websites and software tools he could use. Another gave him a book on business basics. He was starting to see a path forward, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. The world of technology was fast and competitive. There were many people with big ideas and even bigger money to back them up. He didn't have those advantages. He had to rely on hard work, patience, and determination. One afternoon after finishing a delivery, he sat in his truck and opened his laptop. It was an old one, slow and sometimes unreliable, but it was his tool. He began writing the first lines of code for his system. It was simple at first, just a way to enter delivery addresses and get a suggested route. As he typed, he smiled to himself. It wasn't much, but it was something. A tiny step toward turning his dream into reality. Days turned into weeks. He improved the program slowly. He added features to help drivers avoid traffic jams and suggest quicker paths. He tested it on his own routes, and it helped him save time. The idea that had once been just a sketch was beginning to work in real life. One evening, after a long day, he sat back and looked at the screen. The program wasn't perfect, but it was real. He felt proud. It was more than just a tool. It was a symbol of what he was becoming. But the real test was still ahead. Could he make this work for others? Could he take this simple program and turn it into something big? Something that could change the way deliveries were made in cities everywhere? He didn't know yet, but he was ready to try. Around this time, he began thinking about the woman who had challenged him. The one who had doubted him and made him feel small. He wondered what she would say if she knew what he was working on now. Would she still smirk and say, "Don't get used to it"? Or would she finally call him boss? The thought made him laugh quietly. It wasn't about proving her right or wrong anymore. It was about proving something to himself. That he was capable. That he could rise above the things that tried to hold him down. One day, he shared his idea with a small group of people at a local tech meetup. He was nervous. He wasn't dressed like the other speakers. He didn't have flashy slides or a big company behind him, but he had a story and a product. He showed them his program and explained how it could help delivery drivers and companies save time and money. Some people asked questions. Some offered suggestions. One person even said it was a good idea and encouraged him to keep going. That small encouragement was like fuel. He started working harder, learning more about how to make his program better and how to turn it into a business. The road was still long, but every day brought new hope. He also faced challenges outside of his work. Being a delivery driver wasn't easy. Some customers were impatient or rude. Traffic was unpredictable. There were days when he felt invisible to the world, like no one saw the person behind the uniform in the truck. But now he carried a secret strength inside. Every package he delivered was a reminder that he was capable of more. Every difficult customer was a test of his patience and will. Every moment on the road was part of the journey to something greater. He dreamed of the day when he could walk into a room, not as a delivery driver, but as the founder of a company that was changing the world. A company that helped people like him, who worked hard but were often overlooked. He thought about the future, not just for himself, but for others who had been told they couldn't succeed because of where they came from or what they did for a living. And in those dreams, he saw himself standing tall, not just fixing crates or delivering packages, but leading a team. He saw the woman who had taunted him, but this time he wasn't afraid. This time he was ready, because he had already fixed something important. Not just a broken crate, but the broken idea that he wasn't enough. and now he was building something that no one could take away. The days that followed were a mix of hope and struggle. The delivery driver kept working on his project whenever he had time, but the world around him was not always kind. Some days the weight of his job pressed down on him, making it hard to believe that his dream could really come true. But each time he felt like giving up, he remembered the woman's words, "Fix it, and I'll call you boss." Those words were no longer just a challenge from someone else. They had become a promise he made to himself. One morning, after finishing a long night shift, he sat down at a small cafe near his apartment. He was tired but determined. The laptop in front of him showed the latest version of his delivery system. He had added new features. It could now learn from past routes and suggest even smarter paths. It was still far from perfect, but it was better than before. As he sipped his coffee, he thought about how far he had come. A few months ago, he had been just a man driving around the city, trying to make ends meet. Now, he was building something that might change the lives of many drivers like him. But he knew that having a good idea wasn't enough. To make it real, he needed help, money, support, and people who believed in him. That was the hard part. He remembered the local tech meetup he had attended where a few people had shown interest in his project. He wanted to find more people like them. Maybe some could invest, or maybe someone could help him build the program faster. But where to start? He didn't know many people in the tech world anymore, and the ones he did know had their own lives and problems. Still, he didn't give up. One afternoon, he visited a community center that offered free classes and support for small business owners. He signed up for a course on entrepreneurship, how to turn an idea into a real business. The class was full of people from different backgrounds, each with their own story and dream. The teacher spoke about planning, marketing, and finding customers. The delivery driver listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. For the first time, he felt like he was not alone. There were others who wanted to build something, who understood the struggles and the hope. In the weeks that followed, he worked harder than ever. He balanced his job as a delivery driver with the classes and hours spent on his project. Sometimes he felt exhausted. His hands would shake from tiredness and his eyes would burn from staring at the screen too long. But he reminded himself why he was doing this. One evening, while working late in his apartment, he received an email that made his heart race. It was from a local business competition, a contest for new ideas and startups. The prize was money to help grow a business, plus mentorship from experienced professionals. He read the details again and again. This was the chance he had been waiting for. But entering the competition meant preparing a presentation, explaining his idea clearly, and convincing strangers that his project was worth their attention. He wasn't used to speaking in front of people or selling himself. He felt nervous, unsure if he could do it. But then he remembered the crate he had fixed at the mansion, the woman's smirk, and the small word boss. Those moments reminded him that he was stronger than his fears. He decided to enter. For the next few weeks, he worked on his presentation. He practiced explaining his delivery system in simple words, focusing on how it could help drivers save time and money. He created slides that showed how the program worked and why it was better than existing tools. Sometimes he would stand in front of the mirror, rehearsing the speech over and over. At first, his voice was shaky, but slowly he gained confidence. He wasn't just a delivery driver. He was someone with a vision. The day of the competition arrived quickly. The room was filled with people dressed in suits and smart clothes, carrying laptops and folders. The delivery driver felt out of place in his worn jacket and tired shoes, but he held his head high. When it was his turn, he walked to the stage with the laptop under his arm. He took a deep breath and began. He spoke about his journey, how he had once been a delivery driver, how he faced challenges, and how that had inspired him to build something better. He explained the smart delivery system and showed how it could help drivers and companies. The audience listened quietly. Some nodded, others whispered to each other. When he finished, a few people clapped. It wasn't the loudest applause, but it was real. After the presentation, judges asked questions. They wanted to know how he would find customers, how much money he needed, and how he planned to grow the business. He answered honestly, admitting he was new to this world but ready to learn. Later that evening, as the competition came to an end, the delivery driver waited nervously for the results. When his name was called as one of the finalists, He felt a rush of joy and relief. He hadn't won the top prize, but he had earned something just as valuable: recognition and encouragement. People came up to him, shaking his hand and asking about his project. One mentor offered to meet with him and help him develop a business plan. Others said they wanted to stay in touch. For the first time, the delivery driver felt like he was on a path. Not just a dream, but a real journey toward something bigger. Over the next months, he worked with the mentor, learning about finance, marketing, and customer relations. He started reaching out to delivery companies, sharing his program and asking for feedback. Some companies ignored him, others gave polite replies, but a few showed real interest. One small delivery company agreed to test his program with a few drivers. The results were promising. Drivers saved time, avoided traffic, and felt less stressed. The delivery driver was proud. He was not just fixing crates anymore. He was fixing problems that affected people like him every day. Meanwhile, the woman in the mansion had no idea that the driver she had taunted was slowly building something that could change the delivery world. She continued her busy life, unaware that those words she said so casually had sparked a fire in someone else's heart. One afternoon, the driver found himself near the mansion again, delivering another package. As he walked up to the door, he wondered if she would remember him, if she would say something different this time. He rang the bell and the door opened. The woman stood there, surprised to see him. He smiled and said politely, "I'm still fixing things. Maybe one day you'll call me boss again." She looked at him for a moment, then smiled, and not a smirk this time, but a real smile. "Maybe I will," she said softly. The delivery driver left with his package and walked back to his truck, feeling lighter than before. He didn't need her approval, but it was nice to know that she saw him differently now. His journey was far from over. There were still challenges to face, obstacles to overcome, and dreams to chase. But he knew one thing for sure. He was no longer just a delivery driver. He was a creator, a leader, and a man who believed in himself. And that made all the difference. The days after the competition were full of excitement and hard work. The delivery driver felt a new kind of energy running through him. He had taken a big step forward, and now he wanted to keep moving. The small delivery company that agreed to test his program was important to him. It was the first chance to see if his idea could really make a difference. Early one morning, he met with the managers of the company to go over the plan. They talked about how the drivers worked, what problems they faced, and how his program could help. The managers were curious but cautious. They had tried new things before that didn't work out. But something about his passion and honesty made them willing to give it a chance. The delivery driver spent the next few days helping the company's drivers install his system on their phones and tablets. He taught them how to use it, showing them how the routes could change based on traffic, road closures, or package priorities. At first, some drivers were skeptical. They were used to their old ways and didn't think a new program could help. But slowly, as they started using it, they noticed the difference. One driver told him, "I saved almost an hour yesterday avoiding a big traffic jam." Another said, "It helped me plan my stops better so I didn't waste time driving back and forth." The delivery driver smiled quietly. These small wins meant a lot to him. He wasn't just fixing crates anymore. He was fixing the way people worked, helping them do their jobs better and with less stress. But things weren't always easy. Some days the program would have bugs, small problems that made it slow or confused the drivers. He spent long nights trying to find and fix these issues. Sometimes he felt frustrated, wondering if it was worth the trouble. But then he remembered how far he had come, how he had once been the man who was told to fix it like it was impossible. Now he was fixing real problems, helping real people. The delivery driver also realized that running this project meant more than just coding. He had to think about business, how to keep the company happy, how to get more customers, and how to manage his time between deliveries and work on the program. It was a lot to handle. One afternoon, while taking a short break between deliveries, he sat down on a bench in the park near a busy street. He looked around at the people walking by, parents with children, workers on their lunch breaks, elderly couples enjoying the sun. Everyone had their own story, their own struggles and hopes. He thought about his own story, how he had started this journey as a simple delivery driver, underestimated and ignored by many. Now he was building something that could change lives even if it was one step at a time. The sun was warm on his face, and for a moment, he felt peaceful. Just then, his phone rang. It was the manager from the small delivery company. They had some good news. They wanted to expand the test and let more drivers use the program. This was a chance to learn more and improve faster. The delivery driver's heart jumped with excitement. It was proof that his hard work was paying off. He promised to visit the company the next day to help with the expansion. Over the next few weeks, the program grew. More drivers started using it and feedback poured in. Some ideas were easy to add, like clearer directions or better notifications. Others were harder. Things that required rewriting big parts of the program or learning new technology. Sometimes, when things got tough, the delivery driver would think back to the woman in the white blazer, the one who had challenged him with her sharp words. He wondered if she ever thought about him, if she knew he was no longer just the man who delivered packages, but someone who had started a journey to become a leader. One day, after a long morning of deliveries and fixing bugs, he decided to visit the mansion where it all began. It was a quiet afternoon, and the streets were calm. He walked up to the gate and looked around. The place was beautiful and expensive, a world away from his small apartment. The door opened and the woman appeared. She was surprised to see him. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then he spoke. "I wanted to say thank you," he said simply. "You gave me a challenge and it pushed me to believe in myself." She looked at him, her expression softening. "I didn't know you had it in you," she admitted. "I was wrong to doubt you." They talked for a few minutes. No anger, no bitterness, just respect. Before leaving, he told her about his program, how it was helping delivery drivers and companies. She listened carefully, genuinely interested. It was a moment of connection. Two very different lives meeting for a moment, changed by an unexpected challenge. Walking away from the mansion, the delivery driver felt a quiet pride. He wasn't just someone who fixed crates anymore. He was someone who fixed problems and opened doors, not just for himself but for others. Back in his apartment that evening, he sat at his kitchen table and opened his notebook. The pages were now filled with new ideas, plans for the future, and notes from the business classes he had taken. His dream was growing bigger, and he was ready to face whatever came next. He thought about the future, expanding his program, helping more drivers, and maybe one day running a company that changed the delivery industry forever. But for now, he was focused on the next step. The next delivery. The next fix. Because every journey is made of small steps and he was ready to keep walking. The delivery driver's life was changing, but not all at once. Some days felt full of hope and progress, while others were heavy with doubt and exhaustion. The road to success wasn't a straight line. It was full of twists, turns, and moments where it was hard to keep going. But he had learned something important. It wasn't about never falling. It was about always getting back up. One cool morning, as the city slowly woke up, he stood outside his small apartment building, waiting for his first delivery of the day. The sky was gray and a soft wind moved the leaves on the trees. The streets were quiet compared to the busy rush hour that would come soon. He checked his phone, opening the delivery app and the program he had created. He was proud of how far the system had come. It was still simple compared to big companies' software, but it worked, and it helped drivers save time. That made all the hours he spent fixing bugs and learning new skills worth it. Just as he was about to leave, his phone buzzed with a message from one of the drivers using his program. It said, "Hey, your app saved me today. Traffic jam on Main Street. I found a better way and still made all my stops on time. Thanks." A small smile crossed his face. Moments like this reminded him why he was doing all of this. It wasn't just about building a business or proving something to others. It was about making life a little easier for people who worked hard every day. He climbed into his delivery truck and started the engine. The day ahead was full of packages, addresses, and people waiting for their deliveries. But now he saw these deliveries as part of something bigger, a step closer to his dream. During his breaks, he continued working on improving the program. He added features like voice directions, better alerts about delays, and tools to help drivers communicate with customers. Each small change made the program more helpful, and he loved hearing feedback from the drivers using it. But the challenges didn't stop. One afternoon, while on the road, his truck suddenly made a strange noise and slowed down. He pulled over to the side of the street and opened the hood. Smoke was rising, and he knew the engine was overheating. This was a problem he hadn't planned for. He was a driver and a programmer, but not a mechanic. He called a tow truck and waited, feeling frustrated. He had deliveries to make and a program to improve, but now he was stuck. As he sat on the sidewalk waiting, a stranger walked by. The man was an older delivery driver with years of experience written on his face. "Truck trouble?" the man asked kindly. The delivery driver nodded. "Yeah, engine overheating. I don't know what to do." The older man smiled. "I've been there. Sometimes you just have to wait and fix one thing at a time. You're doing good, though. I've heard about your delivery program. Helping drivers like me, right?" The delivery driver was surprised. Word had started to spread among local drivers about his work. He felt a little proud, but also humbled. "Yeah," he said. "It's not perfect yet, but it's getting better." The older man nodded. "Keep at it. People like you make a difference." When the truck was finally fixed, the delivery driver was back on the road. That day, the broken engine became a reminder. No matter how smart or hard-working you are, life will throw challenges your way, but the way you handle them, that's what counts. Back home, he spent the evening writing ideas in his notebook. He knew he needed to plan better, find ways to manage unexpected problems like this, and think bigger. Around this time, he started thinking about growing his project beyond just helping a few local drivers. What if his program could be used in other cities? What if it could become a tool that delivery companies everywhere relied on? But to grow, he needed more than just good ideas. He needed funding, partnerships, and a strong team. He began searching for ways to get investment. He researched grants, startup competitions, and even small business loans. Each option had its own challenges. Investors wanted to see more proof, more users, and a clear plan for making money. Loans meant taking risks he wasn't sure he was ready for. One evening, after a long day, he sat at his kitchen table and looked at the numbers. He felt overwhelmed by the complexity of turning a simple program into a full business. The pressure was heavy. Just then, he remembered the community center where he had taken classes. Maybe he could find help there. Maybe he wasn't alone in this. The next day, he went back to the center and spoke with a counselor who helped small businesses. They talked about his goals, his challenges, and the next steps. The counselor encouraged him to apply for a local business incubator, a program that offered support, mentoring, and sometimes funding to startups. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he decided to try. The application process was tough. He had to explain his idea clearly, show how it worked, and convince people that it was worth investing in. He spent nights preparing documents, practicing his pitch, and answering questions. When the day came for the interview, he felt nervous. The panel was made up of business experts and potential investors. They asked tough questions about competition, growth plans, and customer needs. He answered honestly, sharing both his passion and his doubts. After the interview, he waited anxiously for the results. When he got the news that he was accepted, relief and excitement filled him. The incubator would give him the chance to learn, grow, and find the support he needed. The next few months were some of the busiest of his life. He attended workshops on marketing, finance, and leadership. He met other entrepreneurs, some with similar dreams and struggles. Together, they shared advice, encouragement, and sometimes frustrations. He learned how to build a stronger business plan, how to pitch to investors, and how to manage a growing team. At the same time, he kept improving the delivery program. With new resources, he could hire a part-time coder to help fix bugs and add new features faster. He also started talking to bigger delivery companies, hoping to make new partnerships. One day, he received an email from a well-known delivery company interested in testing his program. It was a big opportunity, one that could open many doors. He prepared carefully for the meeting. When the day came, he presented his program confidently, showing how it worked, the benefits it brought, and the vision for the future. The company was impressed and agreed to a trial period with some of their drivers. This was a huge step forward. It meant more users, more feedback, and a chance to prove his program on a larger scale. But it also brought new pressure. The stakes were higher, and the program had to be reliable and easy to use. He worked harder than ever, sometimes late into the night, to prepare for the trial. During this time, the delivery driver also thought about his own story, where he came from, and where he was going. He realized that success wasn't just about technology or money. It was about people, the drivers who relied on his program, the mentors who believed in him, the community that supported his journey. He wanted to build something that made a real difference in people's lives, not just a business, but a purpose. One evening, after a long day of meetings and coding, he sat by his window and looked at the city lights. The world outside was busy and full of possibilities. He smiled, feeling ready for whatever came next, because he knew that no matter the challenges, he had already come so far. And with every step, he was building something more than just a program. He was building hope. The morning sun peeked through the window as the delivery driver sat with a cup of tea in his hand. It had been weeks since his program was picked up for testing by a well-known delivery company. Things were moving fast now, faster than he ever imagined. Every day brought something new. New feedback, new meetings, new technical issues, new people asking questions about how his system worked. The program, which had started as a sketch in an old notebook, was now being used by dozens of drivers. Some were in his city, some were from other cities he had never even visited. It still surprised him when someone he had never met sent a message like, "Hey, your system just saved me 2 hours on the road today, respect." Or, "I've been a driver for 10 years and I've never used anything this helpful." Those words meant more to him than anyone knew. But with success came pressure. Bigger companies asked for more features. They wanted the program to work faster, smarter, and be ready for a larger network of drivers. And although this was exactly what he had dreamed of, he was starting to feel the weight of it all. Late at night, his small apartment glowed with the soft light from his laptop. He often sat there hunched over the screen, reviewing lines of code, fixing bugs, and writing emails. Sometimes he forgot to eat. Other times he barely slept, his phone never stopped buzzing. Messages from drivers, requests from testers, follow-up questions from companies. And then there were the business side tasks, legal paperwork, banking, tax registration, and other things he was learning on the go. Still deep down, he was grateful. Because this wasn't just work. This was his dream slowly coming to life. A dream that started the day someone told him, "Fix it and I'll call you boss." That sentence still lived in the back of his mind, but now it didn't feel like a taunt anymore. It felt like a moment that woke him up, a turning point. One afternoon, he received a message that made him sit up straight. It was from the same woman in the white blazer, the one from the mansion, the one who had smirked at him like he didn't matter. The message was short. "Are you free to meet?" I've been hearing things he wasn't sure how to feel. He stared at the message for a while before typing back. "Sure, let me know when." They agreed to meet at a small cafe, not far from where they first met, but worlds away from where he was back then. He arrived early, dressed simply, the same way he always did. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just being himself. When she walked in, she looked the same, elegant, confident, sharp-eyed. But something about her seemed different. Maybe softer, or maybe he had just changed so much that everything looked new now. They sat down, and after some small talk, she got straight to the point. "I've been hearing about your delivery system," she said, folding her hands on the table. "People are talking about it. Some even mentioned your name." He nodded slowly, not bragging, just confirming. She continued, "I didn't expect that. Not from a guy who was fixing crates outside my house." He smiled gently. "Neither did I, but life surprises us." There was a long pause. Then she said, "So tell me, what are you planning next?" He didn't hesitate. He talked about expanding the system, turning it into a full company, maybe hiring more people, building a customer support team, and continuing to improve the app. His tone was calm but filled with purpose. She listened quietly, studying him as he spoke. Then she leaned back in her chair. "You know," she said, "a few months ago I saw you as just another worker. Nothing more, but now, well, you proved me wrong." He didn't respond with pride or anger. He just said, "Sometimes it takes being underestimated to find out how far you can go." She nodded thoughtfully. "I respect that." Another pause. Then she asked, "Would you be open to an investment?" That question hung in the air. He hadn't expected it. Not from her. He thought carefully before answering. "Why?" he asked softly. "Why now?" She was honest. "Because what you're building is real, and I want to be part of something that actually makes a difference. I see potential. I see growth, and Maybe I see you a little clearer now." He appreciated the honesty, and while he wasn't sure if he was ready to say yes, he also knew something had shifted between them. From that day on, the past didn't matter so much anymore. Later, walking out of the cafe, he felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, peace, and something close to forgiveness. But more than anything, he felt grounded. This wasn't just a story about proving someone wrong. It was about proving himself right. The days that followed were a whirlwind. He was invited to speak at a local tech event, where small startups shared their journeys. Standing on the stage, looking out at the audience, he felt nervous at first. But as he started speaking, something shifted. He didn't talk like a businessman. He talked like someone who had been through it all, from carrying heavy boxes and fixing crates to writing code with tired eyes in a dim apartment. He talked about resilience, about small beginnings, about moments when people laugh at you and moments when you laugh because you didn't give up. By the end of his talk, people stood up and clapped, not just because he was smart, but because he was real. After the event, people came up to him asking for advice, offering partnerships, or just saying, "Thanks for the inspiration." It was overwhelming. In a good way. Back at home, things kept moving. His delivery system was now being tested by companies in other cities. He started hiring a small team, one person for tech support, one for marketing, and another to help manage clients. All of them came from humble backgrounds just like him. He made sure to build a culture of respect, kindness, and teamwork. He wanted his company to feel like the kind of place he would have loved to work at when he was just starting out. One evening, as he stood looking out the window, watching the city lights, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from one of the first drivers who had tested his app. The message read, "Just wanted to say thanks. I get to spend more time with my kids now because I'm not stuck on the road as long. Your program changed my life, man." He stared at that message for a long time, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. That was what success meant to him. Not fancy offices, not being on magazine covers, not even being called boss, but knowing that something he built with his own hands through struggle and doubt had made life better for someone else. That was enough. The wind felt a little different that morning. A little calmer, a little lighter. The delivery driver stood near a wide glass window looking out at the quiet city below. The sun was slowly rising, casting a soft golden light over the rooftops. His hands were in his pockets and his mind was filled with quiet thoughts. He was no longer in his small apartment. This was a new space, a simple but beautiful office, not too big, just enough for a small team. A soft hum of computers filled the air along with the gentle tapping of keyboards. The smell of fresh coffee floated through the room. This place was now his workplace, his company. It still didn't feel real sometimes. He looked around. There were 5 people working that morning. Each one had their own desk. One was answering customer questions, another fixing bugs in the system. Someone else was making calls to small delivery companies, sharing how the system could help them. All of them had joined the company in its early days, when it was still small, still just a dream. Now they believed in it as much as he did. It had taken a lot to get here. The program was now being used in multiple cities by hundreds of drivers. Some big delivery firms were in talks to sign long-term deals. The system was working better than ever, faster, smarter, and more user-friendly. But none of it had come easy. There had been nights when he couldn't sleep. Days when nothing worked. Moments when he thought about giving up. But he had kept going, step by step, problem by problem. What started as a simple idea had turned into something powerful. He remembered the very beginning. Fixing a broken crate outside a mansion. Hearing those words, "Fix it and I'll call you boss." Those words had once stung, but now they felt like a distant memory, one that no longer had power over him. He wasn't chasing someone's approval anymore. He had found something better. Self-respect. One of his team members came over with a small box. "Hey, this just arrived for you," she said, smiling. He opened the box slowly. Inside was a letter and a plaque made of dark wood and glass. The letter said he had been selected for a local award, Innovator of the Year, given to people who created real change in the community. He read it twice. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then a soft smile appeared on his face. It wasn't the award that mattered so much. It was what it stood for. Proof that his work had made an impact not just in business, but in people's lives. He placed the plaque on a shelf near his desk, next to his old notebook, the one he had used when all of this was just an idea scribbled in pen. Later that afternoon, he had a meeting with a group of investors who were interested in supporting his company's expansion. He didn't wear a fancy suit. He wore his usual clean shirt and comfortable jeans. He didn't pretend to be someone he wasn't. When he entered the room, the investors were already waiting. He greeted them with calm confidence, his laptop in hand. He gave a short but clear presentation. He didn't use big words or complex graphs. He told a story, his story, from being a delivery driver fixing crates to building a tool that now supported hundreds of workers like him. He spoke about how his system helped drivers save time, reduce stress, and even spend more time with their families. He shared messages from real drivers. Simple, heartfelt notes like, "Thanks to your app, I finally made it to my daughter's school play." By the end of the meeting, there was silence in the room. Then one of the investors smiled and said, "You're not just building a business, you're building something that matters." That evening after the meeting, he walked back to his office alone. The streets were busy, people rushing home, cars honking, lights flashing. He passed a delivery van parked at the side of the road. A young man stepped out carrying a package. Their eyes met briefly. The young man smiled. "You're the guy who made that smart delivery app, right?" He nodded, surprised. "I use it every day," the driver said. "Makes the job way easier." "Respect, man." That moment hit deeper than any award or investment. Back at the office, the day was almost over. His team started packing up, saying goodnight. One by one, the lights dimmed as the office emptied out. He stayed behind for a while, sitting quietly at his desk. He opened the old notebook and flipped through the pages. The sketches were still there. Rough, messy, full of crossed-out ideas, but each one told a part of the journey, a path from struggle to success. He picked up a pen and wrote one more line at the bottom of the last page. Believe in the slow rise, because that's what it had been. A slow, steady climb, from being judged for his clothes, his job, his skin, to becoming someone people now respected. Not because he shouted loud, but because he showed up, kept going, and built something that helped others. A message popped up on his screen. It was from the same woman who had once looked down on him. The message was short. "Just saw the news about your award. Well deserved. You earned it." He stared at the screen, took a breath, and replied, "Thank you. That means something." Then he shut the laptop. The night was quiet. The city outside didn't care who he used to be. And neither did he, because now, he knew exactly who he was. Not just a delivery driver. Not just a tech creator. Not just someone who fixed things. He was a leader. A builder. Quiet storm that had risen with patience and purpose. And finally, he had become the boss on his own terms.